All this planning session order, if you join me for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do a roll call. Mayor Lindsay,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Howell,
Here.
Councilman Hubbard,
Here.
Councilman Weeks,
Here.
Councilman Crane.
Here.
Yeah, have a quorum.
If I could please ask for a motion for the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to item A. Presentation of our fiscal year 23 audit.
Well, gentlemen, first off, thanks for having us, hiring us to your audit. It was a pleasure working for you. You all have made good decisions. You're moving in the right direction. You've gotten, much more competent management in place. And that's what we want to see. And where you're at now, we'll get to the findings and we'd like to see just keep on moving on the path of improvement and serving your citizens to the best of your ability on these financial matters. On here, I'm gonna push forward to page 16, 17. This is just your balance sheet. It shows anything to look at in here is your general fund. And then all your special revenue funds, you'll see you have approximately $9.7 million in unrestricted general fund cash. Comparing that to your expenses in the general fund of 5.4 million, and then I look at revenues over expenses of 3 million, you are very financially viable. You have plenty of revenues to provide your citizenry here a high level of services if you desire. You're also holding substantial amounts of cash balances, which we'll look into here in just a bit. Your joint utility, it's on page 26, 27, I'll show you your utility and your joint solid waste and your joint utility, which is water and wastewater. In here, I see nothing of concern as far as your operations are concerned. As far as cash balances, revenues over expenses, usually a lot of municipalities in the state of New Mexico, they are in dire need of rate increases and they don't like it when I tell them they need them. I'm not telling you need them. It's nothing of huge concern here. And that's even further seen on your statement of cash flows on page 29. With that, one thing to note on your joint utility, how you all have issued bonds. You've had done bond issuances and you're just doing a bond issuance. And you'll do it, and you'll say, all right, we're gonna do 40% for the joint utility, 60% for general government, or you'll do half and half. With that, the accounting for those bond issuance, all of those bond issuance, yes,
I just want to clarify to make sure y'all know, when he says general government, he's talking about the streets department,
yes,
Because that's out of the general fund.
because it's our general. fund.
and it's a governmental fund over an enterprise fund.
Right.
So, and it's classified in governmental activities. But yeah, the streets fund, all that debt's held in governmental funds and it's paid out of governmental funds. So these financial statements are in essence are showing a portion of your debt that is being subsidized by your governmental funds. In essence, out of your general fund through property taxes, because you can in essence could use those in anything you so desire, but you're using those on the joint utility. And in these financial statements, these schedules, as I've shown Brett, they're broken down to where you can figure out exactly what that number is on all of these debt issuances, which start on for the joint utility. I'm not gonna go into huge detail here. I don't think you wanna listen to me talk about financial statements for hours. 56. Right, 56 is where joint utility, a business type activity debt starts. And you'll see through here on 58, 59, 60 schedules, and these will tell you what portions of each of these schedules are for the streets or for your joint utility. But it's neither here nor there, I'm just point that out. Something to maybe take into consideration when you're looking at how much your joint utility is being subsidized. And it is a bit, not extremely. Still, even if that takes consideration, the numbers we see there are not horrible. I'm gonna push.
Can I interject?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
So with this recommendation, if we move forward with it, it may actually open the door, because to additional revenues from go bonds because we're no longer limited to the, property tax revenue for determination of our payback. If we dedicate enterprise funds to paying back their portion of the go bonds, it should, I think, I need to talk to the go bond attorney to be sure, but I think it could open up so that we could be eligible for more go bonds.
Yeah, or you can also make the joint utility pay back the general fund. Or you could secure joint utility revenues with debt issuances.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so in essence, not go bonds, you could just secure those revenues. Cause you do have the revenues to secure additional revenues. But with that, as you secure more and more revenues, eventually your lending source is gonna say, hey, you need to increase those rates because we want a debt coverage ratio. Generally, it's around 120%. They wanna see all debt outstanding, debt service multiply your free cash flow, or it's in essence your income by 120%. So you have debt coverage ratio of 120%. Which, yeah, 100% what you're saying right there. I think that's a very good way of looking at it, and it makes the accounting for debt much better when you secure your joint utilities services by joint utility revenues. That way the users of the services are paying for those services directly. But it's neither here nor there. It's not right or wrong. There's many different ways to do anything. One thing I really want to point out is page 90. On page 90, you'll see all your cash. You have a ton of cash sitting in bank, around $20 million. It's not earning interest. Now, interest rates right now are around, you get a risk-free rate you can get at the state treasurer's office around 5.5%. So in essence, you're paying them well over $1 million a year just to hold your money. So you're paying the bank, because they're making well over 5.5%, and you could be making that. It's costing you over $1 million a year to have your money to sit here at InBank. Now, I've talked to management and they said why they did that, because they got off audit finding in the past, because if you get monies from the federal government, you're not supposed to earn interest on those. But what you did is you got an audit finding and you did a knee-jerk reaction. It's been costing you over $1 million a year for the past couple of years. And I personally feel I'd take an audit finding over not earning a few $1 million, because this money could go to further serving your citizenry, keeping your employees well paid, because as you know, the job market is getting tougher and tougher. So it's getting harder and harder to pay people, get the right people in here, it takes the right salaries. Another $1 million could go a long way in any community. So I think that's just a huge area to focus on. If you give you the biggest recommendation, put this money to work for your citizenry and get that money into the state's treasury pool. But you can do it however you like. Highly recommend the LGIP state treasury pool. It's low risk, it's easy for compliance purposes, and it's not gonna get you an audit finding. And you will maximize your return.
And
With anything to add?
just so you know, I've already had a meeting with InBank, and hopefully this will be rectified one way or the other in the month of August. And what we'll need to do is look at a couple of different options, and either which funds we want to move money into and how much. So we're gonna try and have 3 or 4 months of cash available, and then potentially move the rest into some sort of fund at one of the banking institutions, either the state bank or keep it at InBank, and whoever's gonna give us the best rates. So we've already started working on that.
I'm sure InBank does not like to hear these conversations because they're making $1 million a year off you easy, well, a bit over $1 million. So, yeah. With that, you just point at page 100. This is your expenditures of federal awards. You spent $819,000. This is just money the federal government gave you in grants. The rest is loan and loan guarantees. On your water system, just point that out because the more money any community can bring in for the federal government, the better off you are, the better off we are as a state. We need to bring and try to get as much capitalize as many federal grants as we absolutely can. It helps our entire state out. and helps every business owner out. It's bringing money outside of our citizenry in here to, help this place out. And with that, I'm gonna get on the findings. Is there anything you want me to hit on that I didn't hit on in here? As far as financially, we got capital assets, we got debt, you got receivables, you got payables. I don't know if you want me to, like I said, we're gonna talk hours about all these things, but you know, accounting's not the most fun thing to have to preach that about, so. You let me know. All right, let's go to findings. First finding. Emmets, and special assessment district receivables. You all have a special assessment district and you assessed all these properties, a receivable that they need to pay this debt. And the debt is in here, it's on these financials, but the receivable on that these properties need to pay has not been tracked properly. Brett and I have talked at length on this. He's very, very aware of what to do, what needs to be done. In here is an option. We actually recommend possibly use an escrow company. That's what a lot of other communities do when they do something like this. Because in essence, you have an amortizable receivable. As you do not pay me, I earn interest. Is speaking for you as the village, as people pay this. And this receivable needs to be tracked and the interest needs to amortize on a I can't believe it's a monthly basis or annual basis. I can't remember, but it needs to be amortized per the agreement. The other thing, ambulance receivables, the ambulance receivable, you have a company doing your billing, they just could not provide a receivable schedule. It's a material number, so there it is in your financial statements. Both those things need to be addressed. It's a specific, I can't say one's more important than the other financially, but the special assessment district, it'd be of extreme importance to your citizenry.
So, and Mr. Mayor, the one thing I'll say there is that we already had conversations with the interim fire chief. And we've gone through our CPO to determine that we don't need to go out to RFP because it hasn't been over $60,000 historically. But with the new fire chief that just started yesterday, one of the things hopefully Teague is transitioning is we need to hire a new vendor for billing and accounts receivable for the ambulance services. And we'll work with the fire department to do that. Special assessment district, we've already started. So when we did the conversion, or when the prior administration did the conversion from Cassell to Encode, they lost all of the special assessment district data, except for the data, people that still owe their bills. Well, there's a lot of people that paid their bills and paid off. All that data is gone. And we've gone and pulled printed copies of data from reports going back into 15 and 16. And right now Audrey is in the process of recreating the amortization schedules for all those people. And then when they converted, they didn't convert the amount that was the amount that was unpaid on the account. They converted the amount due only, and then in the new system treated it like the amount that was still owed on that account by individual. But that in those accounts, we've determined now that included penalties and interest and other things that should have been included. So the special assessment district is not good, because if you look at the numbers right now, the money we have left to collect will not pay off the debt. So we're in the process, so we're gonna have to rebuild that whole thing.
Yes, your receivable on that, like you were saying, should exceed or equal the debt. So, yeah, anyway. We good on that? Push forward, all right. Policies and procedures, when people go get gas, when you run an organization with lots of employees are very good at figuring out ways to take advantage of any system, including taking free gas. They'll take anything. Good people will end up stealing. If there's a way, what we want to make is systems where we will detect and correct it if you do that. And then in essence, we put pressure on them where they don't do it. And your gas is at high risk. Gas is a high risk, misuse of WEX cards and MVD receiving processes. What we want to see is if you're over there and you go and get gas, there is a way to track everyone's gas purchase in that vehicle. For, whether it's at your station, your pump station you have, what do you call the station here?
Feels,
The fuel station,
Yeah.
for your fuel station, you have some type of controls where only village vehicles can go in there, there's a camera in place. WEX cards on that end are assigned to a vehicle, and MVD, when they collect monies, those monies are reconciled to, it's called the state tapestry report for MVD transactions. We see how many transactions, we multiply it by the fee we charge each customer. We rec that to their drawer and we trace that into the bank statement. So those three areas, there are weaknesses on gas, use of WEX credit cards for gas, and MVD transaction fees. You want to add anything to those?
I just want to say the MVD transaction, we've already changed the policies and procedures to incorporate the additional reconciliation. The WEX cards, we're in the process of getting, because we had issued WEX cards by person, and they really should be issued by vehicle. And so we've already done that for some vehicles, but we still have a little more work to do to finish that process. On our fuel farm, the monitoring system broke, and it's been up and down over the last year. And I'm not sure if you've heard from Carly what the status is, but what we had to do is implement a manual system where we turn the pumps off, except for scheduled times during the day in which people have to call Carly and schedule a time to come fill up their vehicle. And then she goes out there and manually records everything, which is extremely inefficient, but it's something we implemented as soon as this issue was brought to our attention. We hope to have a new system, or the fuel farm system, I don't,
Supposed to have the parts next week.
to fix it. And then we're gonna we used to have a camera out there. Chuck, didn't we used to have a camera out there? I thought we did. They say there's not one out there anymore. But we're gonna have a camera system, so then there'll be recordings of the camera, so we can verify the vehicle that gas is being put into. As it's being put in there from the fuel farm, so that we don't have to have people schedule a time to come fill up their tank.
Cool. Anything else on that? We're good? All right, next finding, your late filing of your single audit reporting package, just because your audit was so late, here's the finding, you have this late of an audit, you get a finding on this. So you have a single audit. There's not a lot more to say about that. We're good? Pretty self-explanatory. Next, state fire allotment revenues. You, obviously, I think you all know about this already. You've been spending these monies. I've talked to Brett at length about accuracy and classification in the AP process when monies are spent, what GL line item things are recorded to. And really, these should be caught right in the purchasing process. When someone does a purchase requisition, then do a purchase order, it should be caught right there. You all have had extreme amounts of turnover in management. You've had management in place that I don't think they obviously weren't looking for a lot of things. And a lot has changed. So I don't think I need to kick that dead horse anymore. Unless you want me to.
The only thing I will say is this will be in next year's audit as well, because we found about another, I think, $16,000. This is for FY 23, but in the first 6 months of FY 24, there's about another $16,000 that we've identified that fall into the same category. We've reported that to the state fire marshal. They haven't responded as yet to what they want us to do about that. I've offered to just do journal entries since we haven't had the audit completed and move it out of that fund. The only challenge is we've already had to report the carryover amount. And by placing those journal entries, it would change the carryover amount that's already been approved by the state fire marshal and those funds. And so they're trying to decide whether to adjust the carryover amount, or do we have to reimburse them for that like we did the 47,000 from FY 23.
So, and that finding, you're definitely gonna end up owing the fire marshal money back. But if there's reclassifications out of the fire fund, and then we don't see these expenditures as auditing in the fire fund, that's one way to possibly fix this finding. But And also the cost and the resources to fix it over the benefit, I'm gonna leave that to you all to decide. Next, lodgers taxes. When we were doing our planning procedures in June of 23, first thing we saw, which I was surprised by the way, they told us that advertising wasn't subjected to policy, just regular policies and procedures. In essence, it didn't require a PO, didn't require a purchase requisition. All I needed is you had the expense, vendor invoice, and a check. I was pointing out state statute 13-1-98, where these expenses did not fall under state procurement, but nonetheless, we need policies and procedures, and we need to make sure we're spending public resources in a prudent and correct fashion on all expenses, even advertising. So that's what that is. You need, all advertising expenses need to be subject to a purchase requisition, purchase order, and per my discussions, you've already fixed that. That has been fixed and corrected. Next one, lodgers taxes. Once you need to do a lodgers tax audit, talk to Brett, we'll get you a lodgers tax audit going this next January, so that it's already an issue on 24, it's an issue on 23, and then 25, that should be corrected. Next, you already know about the accumulation of lodgers taxes. I think you're dealing with that now. The state's been hounding you all about this. So obviously, you need to spend lodgers tax funds.
Brian.
Yes, so good luck. I won't kick that horse any further. There it is. Second to last finding, your budgetary controls, village had cash appropriations in excess of available balances in the recreation fund. In essence, if expenses exceed revenues on your budgetary basis, you have to have available cash, beginning cash. If you don't, then you're not paying attention to your budget. And your final budget had expenses in excess of revenues, and there wasn't cash, available cash to make up that budgetary shortfall. And that's what that finding is. If we see that, we're required to put it in there as a finding. Is that pretty clear? Last finding, late audit report. Well, is that the last? No, there's a few more. No, that is the last. The rest is your responses. Late audit report. That's pretty straightforward. With that, biggest thing I can say again is just harp on the get a return. When you have $20 million in the bank, management of cash is a really big deal. Most people don't have that much cash. Most municipalities don't. But for you, let's manage cash. Let's get our people the best bang for their buck. So, anything else?
Very much.
You want me to do it again? But thank you all. It's been a pleasure working with you, with all your staff, with Brett. I really feel like the village has taken a turn, and you're going back into how a village should be ran. But it's soon, from when we started planning in 23 till now, we've seen major changes and in the way we expect it to go.
Good.
So, thank you all.
Thank you.
And here's an extra audit report for you. And get my number from Brett if you have any questions, if you'd like to talk further.
Do you have any other questions or discussion on the presentation of the audit? We'll move on to item B, hospital district. Wanted to add this item to our agenda. As you may know, we're a member of what's the
South Central Colfax County Hospital District.
South Central Colfax County Hospital District. And as we start to chip away at certain things, this has come to the forefront as a priority for this village, is our total lack of healthcare. And quite frankly, accountability and the perceived perception from our valley of representation in that hospital district. And so we will be getting much more involved in that hospital district, and look for solutions to help staff not only the Moreno Valley Clinic, but hopefully also the new clinic at the resort. I think there's more than enough demand, but it comes down to the basic issues that the valley faces. Number one, what we're already seeing is workforce housing. From what I understand, we do have a new nurse practitioner that's gonna be starting, at the clinic. But the challenge now is housing.
I think they were on Facebook looking for housing, if it's the person.
We were told yesterday, down in Ferguson, that they have found housing. for them.
They have, good.
It's not so, 100% solidified, but yeah.
So, and so that's one nurse practitioner, that's great, that's better than what we currently have. But like I said, we wanna be much more involved and quite frankly, apply pressure where we can to get the resources devoted to our valley. So if anybody has any suggestions, I know, myself, Counselor Crane and Counselor Howe all planned to attend the meeting last Monday. When I found out the two of them were both going, I bailed. So that we wouldn't have a quorum. But, I was glad that we had good representation at that meeting. And, really get involved in that conversation, so just wanted to keep people. Informed there. Do you have anything to add?
I have a couple things. There's some concerns. I had asked for and received and subsequently shared with the mayor and Manager Weir, the hospital district's financials for the last 2 years. Both their audits and their monthly spends. The audits are more like this. It's a little hard to parse. But the monthly spends are actually broken out by facility. So it will tell you how much money they're spending at each of the facilities, all 3 of them. So we have those documents. I'd also asked Commissioner Weir for a copy of revenues, the mill levy tax, how much money is generated in furtherance of this. And that data is fairly enlightening. I was at the meeting with Mayor Pro Tem Howe. They are moving forward with the issuance of a $10 million bond vote. They're getting it on the election for this November. It looks like they're trying to spend about $6 or $7 million in addition to the $15 million they got from the governor to complete the long-term care facility in Springer. And want to spend of the $10 million bond, about $1 million of it up here to renovate the building. Moreno Valley Health Clinic, which is great, but I think the comments were made by several people that we really need a doctor more than we need a facelift of the building, so. Quick math, it looks like Moreno Valley, so Eagle Nest, Edelweiss, Angel Fire, Black Lake generates about 60-ish% of the district's total revenue, and we only get about 30% of that money spent up here. So there's some accounting challenges here, to say the least. I don't know if there will be an official position taken, but it's gonna be very hard to poll this district other than locally up here, but they are moving forward with this vote on November 5th when the general election is, and so it'll be interesting to see how those vote totals come in. I don't think we're the only ones experiencing issues with lack of doctors within the district or statewide. It's not an easy problem to solve, but from my interpretation, I don't know that the steps they're taking are really adequate to address getting a doctor up here in the short term. So we'll keep attending and keep pulling information, but it's a tricky situation, to say the least.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to inform the council, it was, we came out of that meeting, or I didn't attend the meeting, but I heard secondarily, was that there was apparently someone in the audience that had experience in this industry and informed the district, yes, they're commissioners. I'm not sure their exact titles, but the leadership of the district that their offer, the salary range that they were offering wasn't sufficient to bring people into a community like this. And that what I heard, again, this is secondhand, but I heard that they needed to up it by about $50,000 in order to be competitive. If they were going to attract a full-time position for Moreno Valley. So hopefully the board or commission will take that advice and do that, because I do believe that we need preferably, I just know when we moved here and Dr. Cohen was running the place, there was hardly ever, you didn't take long to get to see Dr. Cohen. He did a great job. And there's been a lot of challenges ever since he left. And so I think a full-time position, and secondarily, maybe a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner is really what we need here ultimately. So hopefully the board will hear that and take action to try and accomplish that. Second of all, we are preparing, to try and step in and help the situation. Our major concern is ski season, when we have a very high percentage of the medical needs for this community occur during ski season. As a matter of fact, the chief just walked out, but the second meeting that I took the fire chief on was with Maya from the resort, who's their risk management vice president. And we were already in discussions of, you know, if the resort can't find somebody to take over the urgent care facility on the mountain, how can the village step in and do that, and trying to structure a process for that. I will tell you that I need the chief to make a decision fairly quick on this, but we do have $264,000, which we discovered we had in the audit. That is money from the federal government due to COVID, and it has to be spent by December 31st of this year, or we have to send it back. That money has limitations on what it can be spent on, but public health is one of the things. And so we're in discussions as to whether it makes sense to buy a third ambulance to help service the mountain. Again, that's something we're gonna have to make a decision on quick to get that money expended. But what we do know is where everybody recognizes, the resort included, that if that facility is not open, we're gonna be the primary care for the valley, our EMS department is. And to try and service that, we're not gonna be able to service that mountain and provide our standard service that we're accustomed to our residents. At the same time, we're gonna have to do something, which may mean a third crew, which may mean additional personnel, and all that is expansion of the budget, because we're not budgeted to do that at this point. So the council needs to be aware of that. We're working on that. Chief Vance and I, like I said, already met with them, and we're strategizing how we can step in if we have to. We don't want to, but we may have to in order to serve the community. Now, the services we provide, of course, will bring in some revenue, but as we all know, ambulance service is not a profitable business, so it's not gonna be, even if we start providing those services, the money we generate will not cover the cost of doing so. So I just want the council to be aware of that and to know that I do believe that the ownership of the resort actually is contracted with some people that are supposed to be coming in town. I can't remember when they said, Jason, did I say next week or the 8th, I believe? So to do an assessment to try and find out if they can bring in another primary care physician for the urgent care facility there. So the resort's actively taking steps to try and accomplish this as well. But we need to be prepared and ready to turn on a dime if as we approach ski season. You know, we can't just sit at FS1 waiting for a phone call, because 2 ambulances are not gonna be enough. And the people that are gonna suffer primarily are residents and other occupants in the town and the valley.
Well, I know the hospital board charged Bruce to form a committee, which she has gotten me on, and Chuck, I believe she's asked you to be on it. And we had a meeting last Wednesday night, I believe. And Dan Race was zooming on that. And so was Mark and several other people. I don't know all of the people that was in the first meeting. But I think there's going to be meetings almost weekly for a while. And there was a lot of discussion on how we can address this problem here in the valley. And of course, the resort wants to form some type of partnership there, which, you know, would be probably a good thing. But there's a lot of legal issues that will have to be ironed out there. So I don't know how this is gonna proceed, but I know that we had our first meeting last week on that.
It's good to hear. Anything else to add? Great. Move on to item C. Discussion of an OHV resolution for Highway 434. This is something now that Chief Ogre was supposed to get a little more comfortable in the community. We'd like to explore the opportunity to have an OHV zone from the blinking light to Forest Road 76. So I can turn it over to Chief Ogre.
Let's do this. Thank you, Mayor, Council, Manager, guests, everybody on video. So I did some research. Of course, let me just start with, there's a state statute from, I believe, 2016, went through legislation, and it allows for local governments to allow the use of off-highway vehicles being ROVs, which is a side-by-side by definition, and OHVs, which is more of a four-wheeler by local ordinance to be allowed on local streets. It also gave provision in there that gives the State Transportation Commission the authority to allow the use of ROVs or ATVs on highways that are under their direction and control. So the village, local governments can do their streets, the State Transportation Commission can do their highways and roadways. So looking into all of that, it brings us to what the village of Englefier did in 2017 and adopted by ordinance, allowing the use of off-highway vehicles on village controlled streets and roadways. A couple of little things in that we probably will be needing to address whether this goes forward or gets denied by the State Transportation Department, because it has some language that says the vehicles can be operated on paved streets owned by the village. And we have a lot of streets that aren't paved. And the intent of the law is to allow them on any village street that's deemed safe, roadways, whatever. A few things like that, and our ordinance doesn't account for any reduction in speed limits. It doesn't account for seat belts and a few little things that is mandated by state law. So to be consistent, we're gonna need to revisit. So what I did is going through that and visiting with Department of Transportation briefly about this. It requires several steps. The first step is for the governing body to pass a resolution saying, yes, we want this state highway to the State Department of the State Transportation Commission, it's a division of DOT, to allow use on this roadway that is within our village. So the drafted resolution that I think you probably have before you or have seen is a very simple resolution.
Was
about-
not.
It was in the packet. It was or wasn't it? We can make copies. I'm probably.
I can make them.
You know, right? You need it? I will, but I'll wing it until you get back. So the first step is a resolution from the governing body. That's what I have drafted for presentation here today and for you guys to look at. The resolution is very simple. It just says 434 is within the village. We want to allow that. Where it gets complicated is from the 36.5 mile marker, which is at the intersection of 434 and 64, all the way to our village limits. We can petition for that. We go 1.2 miles outside of that into the county to reach Forest Road 76, which the purpose of this, in my opinion,
and I hope you share this vision, is to allow the ROVs to utilize lodge to trail use and to go outside of the village into the county, 1.2 miles, to access Forest Road 76 on the southern end of the village. There's no other legal or lawful way to access Forest Road 76 through the village without going across a portion of private land. And that would be the power line roads up on the top of towards Brazos and up that way. Now, there is also a power line there, as I just mentioned. There is an easement for that. We possibly could get through that, but that's not what we need. You still can't get from certain places, most places here in the village, from your hotel or motel room or your home. Got a gentleman seated here. We met on a traffic stop, so he's here to support me. And get to the forest access, or to go to the Napa store and buy a battery because your car battery's dead.
Take your trash.
Take your trash, certain simple things. Now, it can get complicated on the other end. We'll talk about that
So,
in a moment.
for everyone to understand too, the reason that we've asked it to go to Forest Road 76, the other is. What we don't wanna do, what I don't wanna do is create an entry point at the power lines. If you're familiar with where that is, that's up on Brazos. But what that would do is that would direct traffic through specific neighborhoods,
It does.
increase OHV traffic. Currently, we already have it on our village roads. As the chief has stated, just can't use the highway. So what we're wanting to do is so everyone can get to the highway and then get to the forest roads from there. That's the goal. So we are complicating it by getting the county involved.
But we really have no choice but to get the county involved on that state. Now, the state Transportation Commission can authorize that without a resolution, but their preference is going to be to have a resolution from any governing body that wishes to allow it on a roadway under their control. So that's kind of first step is the resolution I'm bringing before you for your review. The second would be to approach county commissioners. I think we know one of them pretty well in this room, and see if we couldn't get an agreement on that for a resolution for the last little 1.2 mile section. Third, they're probably gonna require a traffic study on the state highway within the village. That's fairly easy for myself, my staff to accomplish. We could give them the traffic statistics on crashes, how many citations, what those citations are for. We can provide them that. They may wish to go a little bit further into that and do a traffic flow study, vehicles per minute and that kind of stuff. Which they would do, but they would probably want the village to pay a contractor to do that. I don't know what the cost of that would be for sure. I think it would be pretty minimal. And then, if we get that and the traffic study and everything comes back favorable, and they say, okay, we're going to allow this. The next thing would probably be for us to come back to our local ordinance, 2017-7, make the adjustments in there that we want to see, seatbelt uses and a few of the things that I had mentioned. I would suggest we put a provision in there about noise. Not only from the vehicle, but from the boombox sound systems. Knowing what I know from other areas, that can be very problematic. And I would push for a curfew as well. At 8 AM to 8 PM, we could do 7 to 9, you could do 7 to 7. That would be up to you. My recommendation would be 8 to 8, and here's why, because that's what's consistent with other tourism-driven economies in the Enchanted Circle. That's the same hours of curfew. It would perhaps avoid some confusion. And we could also even look at reducing the speed limit to 5 miles per hour below what is posted. However, that's gonna get a little bit complicated because we have some village streets that are already at 15 miles an hour. That means these things are gonna have to go 10 miles an hour. I don't think we wanna go there. perhaps setting a maximum speed limit of 40 miles an hour. The only place in the village that would, that has a 45-mile-an-hour speed zone is at each end of our village limits. So, we could look at that, and to be quite honest with you, in my opinion, having, and I'm gonna speak personally now for just a moment, being an owner of one of these things and really do enjoy recreational activities with it. 45 miles an hour on a modern side-by-side vehicle that has many safety features, as many as some automobiles do, is a very reasonable speed for those. And we're only talking a couple of little places that's gonna come into effect. So with that, and then the fifth and final step would probably fall more on DOT, but we would need to have some signage at each end of town showing where the ROV route ends. So it would end at 64, can't go on 64. It would also end at Forest Road 76. So it's a minimal sign there. That's it in a nutshell. I'll stand for any questions, do more research, whatever you'd like me to do on this matter.
So timing wise, obviously we have to involve the state for the portion outside of the village limits, but they also have to approve the 434 inside of the village limits.
Yes.
Okay.
And Councilman Crane, I'll be honest with you, if the county doesn't do a resolution and the state was only to approve 434, we've accomplished a step in the right direction, but my ultimate goal is to get it so they can go all the way to 76 and enjoy the forest road.
And I think the other benefit of this is we have some folks now who, live down by Monteverde Lake or the country club and take the back way to get to Lowe's or where they're going, and pushing them to 434 with the correct postings and everything would decrease some of our residential traffic.
It will. It absolutely will. Dust, erosion, things like that. I mean, most of these run extreme knobby tires. It causes more erosions to the roadway. I'm sure Mr. Edward can attest to how the dirt roads are. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a win-win, and the beautiful thing about this, folks, is if we pass an ordinance and in 3 years from now or 5 years from now, I could come back to you if this isn't working. That's the dynamics of having a democracy that we live in, is if we make a decision, it can be changed. We can go, okay, we didn't anticipate this or that. I think the growth of tourism is a very positive thing for the community. Word gets out, it's going to bring clientele to put heads in beds as well, which we all want. I know I do, because that's what pays my salary, right? I think we have an opportunity here to step up and do what other communities have already done. Perhaps even at some point in the future, push for the state to do something like Utah has done, which is very open-minded to OHV ROV use. There's one point I forgot to mention, and this came about in 2 other communities that I had involvement with this on. They were not ATV friendly. The traffic, the State Transportation Commission did not approve it for for 4-wheelers, only for ROVs. And I think it's important to point that out. Part of the reason that my 4-wheeler got sold and I bought a side-by-side.
So for UTV, Mr. Mayor, sorry, so for UTVs, not ATVs.
Well, the technical term is ROHV, recreational off-highway vehicle for side-by-sides. ATV is an all-terrain vehicle or all-terrain cycle, whether it's 3 or 4-wheeler design that has a seat and handlebars. If it has a seat and a steering wheel, it's an ROV.
Guess you could get a small trailer and put your ATV, pull it behind your UTV till you get to the trail.
And Councilman Weeds, we say that in a joking manner. I have actually seen people that have wired trailer plugs on their ROV. They have safety chains and they're completely legal doing that.
Absolutely.
Yes. So that's my pitch. I won't take it personally either way you go on this, but a recommendation is that you give this consideration.
One question, one question I did have though, would it, when the state looks at allowing these, do they look, would it affect the speed limits on Highway 434?
I don't believe it will because we're already at a reduced speed limit through the village and town, the body. So I do not anticipate that. There are some areas that had a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit on the thoroughfare through town or greater, and yes, it did affect that.
What we witnessed in Ruidoso was they had an OHV zone that went from the county, this is where we even first saw the county into town. And it was 45 the whole way.
Okay.
Well, and they were also able to post, and we don't have to, but we could choose to leave the passenger vehicle speed limit the same and post a separate ROV speed limit.
But to the chief's point, we don't think we need to.
If we needed to, we could.
It's 40 to the village limit and then goes to 45. And then we're just 45 north.
35, 40, 45, right before you get
Yeah,
the
so
last
there's really,
3/4 of a mile.
I don't anticipate it. I personally don't anticipate it needing to adjust the speed limit.
Right.
I don't think that's. It'll probably be looked at,
Sure.
but I don't think that's gonna be a point of contention with the State Transportation Commission. Other places have, ROV speed limits of 45. We're not gonna exceed that.
Yeah, and it seems like you had a difference, 5-mile-an-hour difference, it would be more dangerous than keeping in the flow of traffic.
There's a point to be made for that as well.
Now, I remember when the council voted on the 2017, help me out on this, Chuck. We had a lot of discussion then about, and it was mostly ATVs at that time. That you had to be a licensed driver
Yes,
to operate this. I don't know what all finally got into the ordinance that we passed, that you had to have helmets.
yes.
And
I'm sorry to interrupt. Anyone under 18 years of age has to have a helmet
Yes.
regardless,
yes,
even in the
yes,
forest.
that was part of the discussion. And like I said, I don't remember everything that got into the ordinance at the time, but I remember that there was an awful lot of discussion on it. The speed limit was discussed, but I can't remember what we finally passed on that. If we did anything, it may have been just maintaining the speed limit that was posted from that thing. You remember, Chuck?
And sir,
I just remember there was a lot of discussion on
Well,
that.
it was voted down ultimately, the highway, the resolution to take them to the highway.
Yeah, the highway never passed, but the village streets did
Right.
back then. Because before that, they couldn't drive on village streets supposedly, but, you know.
so Counselor Humber, to your point, if I may, Mr. Mayor, section 4A, speed limits. The speed limit for a recreational off-highway motor vehicle operating within the village shall be the posted speed limit. So it's the same as automobile
That's what
traffic,
I thought.
is what you passed.
Mhm.
So real quick on the registration, so the vehicle has to be registered and have either an OHV sticker or a license plate. Is that,
In New Mexico, you have to have your registration sticker and the plate.
okay,
For non-residents, you only have to have a non-resident sticker, validation sticker.
okay, and are we issuing those stickers today?
Motor vehicle can issue those to residents or non-residents. We're not open on weekends, but
And that's just for the village, and then there's a separate sticker for the forest, is
Yeah,
that correct?
well, not for the Carson that I'm aware of, no. As
Just the
long as you're
others.
registered,
is. You have to have you off-road sticker from forest. I have one.
which you get when you purchase your New Mexico registration.
Okay.
you can get those online.
At least I do.
So you can get that one without the other, but if you get our permit, it comes with that sticker as well, is that what you're
When I
saying?
registered my side by side, it came with 2 stickers, one for the forest, one for the state registration and a small motorcycle sized license plate.
Yeah.
Is what I got. There is one other thing I want to point out. The state law requires insurance. Our village ordinance does not. that needs to be addressed.
Sure.
Vehicles operating on any street, in my opinion, must be insured. So, as I said, one way or another, whether we go forward with 434 and we get that blessing or not, we need to visit this 2017 ordinance, clean up a couple of little things.
So we should do that sooner than later.
And none of this would have anything to do with the e-bikes. That's a whole separate, that's a different category of vehicle altogether. No crossover, none of that here.
You are correct. On e-bikes. There
Okay.
is also e-motorcycles.
Yep.
The distinguishing is they don't have pedals. The motorcycle, motocross style.
They're
bikes,
class one e-bike.
and they are required to have a registration like a motorcycle. They are considered a motorcycle. Only it's electric powered instead of gas.
Right. But is there a distinction in, because I think what's happening here is there's a old moped clause being applied to some of these that can have pedals,
Yes.
but don't necessarily have. You have to have the pedals mounted for it to be considered, I guess is what I'm
So if
asking.
it has pedals, it's either an e-bike or a moped. A moped is gonna be defined as less than 50 cc gas powered.
Okay,
Or petroleum powered, because diesel, whatever.
so if it doesn't have pedals, because I've seen some now and I've seen them around town where they can have pedals, and that was kind of the loophole, I guess, that was being used, and maybe the kindest way to say it here, that it looks like an electric dirt bike, but I believe it is classified as an e-bike because you can get a pedal kit for it, but I didn't know if that's,
And there are some of those floating around out in the world. There are some that people choose to remove the pedal mechanism from and make them more of a dirt only type bike, but those are a different category than an ROV or an OHV or an ATV, I'm sorry.
Chief, in the very last paragraph, the be it resolved paragraph, on the last full sentence. Hereby adopts and respectfully requests the approval from the local governing council of the village of Angel Fire. I'm not clear on that, why?
So on the resolution,
Yeah,
the resolution comes before you, the governing body,
right,
for approval as a resolution. And as you know, a resolution is, this is our desire,
Right.
this is our will. It's not an ordinance or law. So this document, if approved, will go to the
Right.
next step for the State Transportation Commission.
so I guess where I'm confusing myself, that above it, it says the governing body of the village of Angel Fire respectfully requests approval. It's like we're requesting
Oh,
approval.
well, I see the wording that you're,
Yeah,
I see the wording there,
it should
and
say DOT.
we will
where it says
absolutely-
local governing.
once it's assigned a resolution number and is brought formally for adoption, that's how it works, right? It comes to a regular meeting. Yes, we'll get that cleaned up.
Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out, Counselor Howe.
so necessarily then, if we wanted to move forward, we would have to move forward with a resolution like this to let you work with the state and DOT, and also separately change some of the deficiencies of our current ordinance. Both of those processes are gonna have to happen if we chose to.
As I mentioned, I think our local ordinance needs a little bit of cleanup work. So we need to do that. Simultaneous, I think it's a great idea to move forward in petitioning the State Transportation Commission for use of Highway 434.
And when they review this, they have the, I mean, they would be able to say, okay, we're gonna, if they don't wanna adopt outside the village limits, they're allowed to just approve a portion of this so that it can be in two parts? Or should it be in
Yeah.
two parts to
They-
submit to them?
We only have jurisdiction over our boundaries, so we can't request something for outside of our boundaries. The county would have to submit a
Request
supplemental.
the county to submit something.
Yeah,
And
Okay, I
Mr.
just
Mayor,
thought that
Council, just so you know, the county has already started the initiative of adopting an OHV ordinance. It's in the works right now. So this could easily be worked into that process.
And at this time too, I don't wanna muddy the waters, but I think it's important for this discussion. And I'd have to get familiar with the existing ordinance, but does it address the golf cart specifically?
So golf carts could be one of two things. If they have a 17-digit VIN number assigned to them from the OEM, from the factory, they're registered, they can be registered and are supposed to be registered as an electric motor vehicle. If they do not, then they are considered a golf cart. Golf carts will not be addressed, are not addressed in this. They're a total separate thing and they're not allowed on roadways.
What if?
Mr. Mayor, to your point, those are becoming very popular. Those are becoming very popular as rental vehicles in municipalities. Local governments are enticing them to come in. And of course, as you know, the government gives a certain amount of fuel credits and whatever for people that purchase those. They're starting to be pretty popular. And in my opinion, I think they would blend in the village very well.
Well, I just wanna make sure too, that, I mean, I know we have a lot of. Local residents that use their golf carts on a regular basis, if nothing else, just to access the golf course. So I just
I
wanna see.
I met one the other day doing that.
Yeah.
We
But then-
discussed it and he says he's not gonna do it anymore.
Okay. Any further discussion on the OHV? Resolution? If that's the case, thank you, Steve. Of course, we'll move on to item D, discussion on signage for Highway 434.
Right, and again, I'm guessing this wasn't in the packet.
What is that? Is it?
This is the resolution for the, asking the DOT to reassess the parking signs and other signs. Where you are, sir. So yes, this one will be short and sweet. So, during the 4th of July weekend, holiday weekend, we had a paramount amount of traffic park along 434 from basically Frontier Park south, almost to South Angel Fire Road. That's a poorly lighted area. The vehicles parking on the shoulders. Now to the bridge, the first bridge, they're parking, no parking signs, and we were able to manage that pretty well. Beyond that, the no parking signs are spread out. One is actually parallel to the roadway with an arrow pointing towards town. Made no sense to people. And then you get to South Angel Fire Road, you have the right turn to go west. And you have the merge lane coming out, going north off of there. Thank you, sir. So we identified a few places that parking was very congested. It caused extreme concern, at least to me and the officers, about the pedestrian traffic having to walk on the inside, driver's side, if you will, of the vehicles that are parked along that roadway into the traffic, because pedestrians are gonna walk 2 or 3 abreast, as we know. And it created a big concern in that poorly lighted area. So what I want is, through the governing body, a resolution asking the DOT to assess the area from North Angel Fire Road to South Angel Fire Road along 434. And placement of no parking signs along that stretch of area. Everything north of North Angel Fire Road and, well, north of the bridge up to Frontier Park and North Angel Fire Road and through town is signed very adequately, in my opinion. Where it's lacking is the southern part of that. So my experience in working with DOT is they always like to see something from the governing body, asking them to do something if it's within a local government jurisdiction, and therefore that's what I'm presenting in front of you today.
I know during Balloon Fiesta, it's the same problem over by the airport too.
Well, that was gonna be my question and I may know someone who parked on the side road near the airport, to get to the Mass Ascension one in the morning. Where is there supposed to be parking on 434 anywhere in town?
Essentially, as the law reads, if it's not posted, has no parking, parking is allowed.
Okay.
So I'm talking about this here. I came in right after Balloon Fiesta.
Sure.
I didn't get a good opportunity to view that, although it's been explained to me, some of the concerns about that. This, actually, I put a verbiage in here in one of these paragraphs describing north to south Angel Fire Road, but I also, kind of left it generic in another paragraph about all of 434 to encompass that. We're not sure, at least I'm not sure where the parking is gonna be for Balloon Fiesta, or the Balloon Rally next year. I think we have some ideas. I think there's some good ideas for that parking and stuff. But if we can keep it off of the highway, especially during dim light or low light or no light hours, it answers my concern about pedestrian safety.
The only other question, signage, 4th of July weekend, there were some yield signs or pedestrian signs put up right at the main, Bill Burgess and 434.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of our part-timers thought they were stop signs, and so we kind of inadvertently made a 4-way stop there, which worked out, but is that, I'd never seen signs on 434 kind of in the middle like that before. Is that moving forward what we're,
You hadn't, because I hadn't been your chief.
okay,
I borrowed those from Red River.
okay,
I put them there because when I heard from our manager and others, expect 5,000 spectators or more if the weather's nice. You had my full attention.
sure,
And those crosswalks worked very well, in my opinion. Yes, some people confused them for a stop sign instead of a yield. But the traffic coming in, and I followed vehicles, and they'd come up to there and they would slow down. If there was pedestrians even on the side, they stopped and allowed the pedestrians to go through, especially after that event was over. It saved us a lot. I've actually made some contact with Mr. Epler and our manager and found where we can buy those at a very good price. They're also working on a grant for some solar powered ones that have lights on them and stuff. But yeah, 6 of those here in the 2 crosswalk areas, side of the streets, center of the street and out, I thought was very effective. And I want to do it again.
And I know from personal, I walk to the farmer's market, I walk down
Yeah.
by the bike, it's not pedestrian friendly, we are not. They don't stop.
well, and
Right.
the crosswalk paint is really gone.
The paint, the street painting, of course, that's on the highway department.
Yep,
Yeah, it's substandard. There are signs on the shoulder
Mhm.
that say yield to
Stop for
pedestrians or whatever,
pedestrian, yeah.
crosswalk ahead, this and that. Those are not as effective as an orange cone that's 3.5 foot tall in the center that clearly says stop for pedestrians and crosswalk.
Especially for big events.
Mhm.
Just for big events, certain times a year, we have them staged readily available, for any given weekend or high density, event.
And how could we approach the highway department to, the yellow turning lane? There at North Angel Fire Road and 434, have that yellow paint go where people know they can get over right at the highway to turn. Because when it's double yellow like that, some people they don't even get into that turning lane just for that traffic area.
And you pointing that out, also at Halo Pines, we have where the 3rd lane starts, the center turning lane starts there. There's some confusion there, and I'm gonna venture to say there's probably some confusion all the way through town on what that 3rd lane is actually for. It's intended to be a turning lane. not
Well, I
a
don't know, in
passing
some
lane.
areas you can be turning right and left in the same lane, but
Yes.
particularly on particularly at that intersection though.
Defer to you,
You
I'm
can-
not.
You could,
I know it's on 434, it's not something under our control that you can say, Mr. Epler, we want this done. But there's probably a way to get that restriped without having to go through a resolution that changes something. Because we're not asking to change anything, we're just asking to
Fresh
enhance
paint.
what's already there.
At the regulations.
yeah,
We can ask, this district's DOT supervisor, Pat Gay, those, I think is a we can ask him for input. He's been very responsive when we dealt with him in the past.
Well, I apologize for the detour on the signs. I just thought it was, since we were talking the area and
It's important, and one last thing I didn't mention to you guys. I have tentatively set up a meeting with the district traffic engineer over District 4. Depending on what is the will of the governing body on the signs. In my experience, I learned a long time ago, you try to set things up with the state agencies a long time ahead. So the worst that'll happen is you'll tell me, nah, I don't think we want to do that, and I'll cancel the meeting.
And I didn't know if even a less intrusive striping. No parking, like red striping would, to try to tone down on the signage along the highway. But I didn't know if that would be an option to look at to maybe keep the amount of signs on the highway down to a minimum.
Yeah,
I mean,
so I don't,
Mr. Mayor, that is the main reason that I asked the chief to present this to council, is because we do have some constituents who are concerned about the number of signs on 434 already. And although I'm in favor of putting the no parking signs up, I just want to make sure the council was aware that there is, and I'm sure you are, constituency out there that are already complaining about the number of signs on 434 and how it detracts from the views and the feel of our small town community. So that's a decision I think the council should make is, you know, is adding more signage to those areas for no parking? Is it going to have a negative impact on the aesthetics of our community? And although it'd be much more efficient that way than using smaller temporary signage during events, which require manpower to put out and to pick up. But that's kind of what we're weighing here. Somehow that area, in my opinion, for safety, needs to be no parking. The question is, do we want to do it on events with temporary signage, or do we want to put permanent signage up?
I'm certainly favorable to permanent signage. There might be, once I meet with the engineer, the ability to relocate or remove some, so we're not adding a whole lot. I don't know yet. It's kind of gonna be up to the district engineer to say, yeah, we can do this and this.
Director Epler, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, to back up to two things, as far as the turn lane in the center over here and people not recognizing it. I know that we have people that travel here from areas that don't have such a lane. So it's somewhat confusing to them. But also to touch back on particularly the Balloons Over Angel Fire event discussion we had to look what we'd like to do next summer for traffic control, as opposed to us trying to buy all the materials needed. There are vendors that's their specialty, doing traffic control. Highway Supply in Albuquerque, who we get materials from, as an example of a company that could create a traffic control plan. They have the supplies, we would be renting it, they could set up pedestrian crosswalks. And I see it as a better opportunity to get truly proper traffic control for that big event. Because really, aside from when the balloon event is happening, you don't see very many people parking through there. So to add more signs to tell people not to park there just for that event, there's great options to simply hire somebody to do it, because as much as that's growing and as much as it's going to continue to grow, we'll need a more robust and significant traffic control plan in place.
Well, I think we're hoping to have another event, maybe that doesn't get quite that large, but some other events to bring people in town on those big weekends, so. I may or may not have teased Lieutenant Strickland about his white gloves if he was gonna be out there doing traffic control. I don't know if that's part of the uniform or we need to order some of those too.
Yeah, I get something else.
Maybe, maybe. Well, and just, please bear with me. I'm not here asking for a traffic light anyway.
Yeah.
I already said once we got one.
Could be worse.
I think we'd all get recalled.
But we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, I don't see the need. Not yet. I mean, there could be a time in the future.
And can you actually choose how reflective the paint is on these signs? Because like the
Which
order
signs?
a more dull
Well,
parking, no parking sign.
It'll be the state.
Yeah.
That does it. I'm sure it's pretty.
They're, we're not gonna have any control, we can ask, but they're gonna have complete control
I
over.
just know those signs, they blind you.
Oh, yeah. You
You
get your
can't see a
high
deer or nothing.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I have seen some of the no passing zone signs that, you know, are in conjunction with turning from a strike line to a double line in the highway that are reflective, somewhat reflective. I don't know that I've seen no parking signs.
Yeah, maybe not.
Anyway, that's my presentation. I stand for more questions or feedback or direction from the governing body.
All right, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move on to item E, discussion of a solid waste drop-off location. Manager Ware, Director Epler.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so there is an issue with the village and our solid waste drop-off location. We've had several complaints from residents in the area. It's often noticeable after windy days, but even though our drop-off location is high fenced, there still is a fair amount of garbage that can be blown out of that high fenced area into the neighboring property. That along with the need to, or the desire, I should say, maybe not need, to move the drop-off location closer to the core of town. One of the goals that we had discussed when we were looking at the billing system for the cans that are at condominium complexes. One of the things that was told to us by one of the major managers of those condominium complexes is that he would like there not to be a need for those cans at each these condominium complexes, because it becomes a problem for the property managers to deal with during peak periods. And you know, we tried to deal with that, and I think Director Epler has done a good job of responding to that initially by just doing more pickups. But we've had long discussions and think that a part of the solution, if not the solution, would be to have a enclosed drop-off location for solid waste that's closer to the core of the village. And in that case, hopefully would eliminate it, maybe just reduce, but hopefully would eliminate the need to have cans throughout the condominium complexes where they could easily access a location to drop them off. We do believe that this needs to be enclosed because of, again, the issues we're experiencing with even the high fenced current location where crows pick up, you know, somebody leaves a can open, the crows fly in, they pick it up, they distribute trash. The wind, of course, again, blowing trash. And on several occasions, we've had to send staff out to pick trash up in the field that is there adjacent to the drop-off location. So we think this would increase the aesthetics of the community. We could do something that might even be a more efficient way of managing that. We've been in talks with organizations that have compressors and you know, that would make it more efficient instead of the process we go through today to pick up the cans and dump them and pack them into a trailer to be hauled to Wagon Mound. If we had a compression system where you just put it in a hopper and it pressed it into a container, and then the container was just picked up as when it got full and taken to Wagon Mound. Number one, you would have to make fewer trips to Wagon Mound. And number two, you wouldn't have the issue with, you know, any potential trash blowing out of the trailer and things of that nature. But one of the things we want you guys to start thinking about, and we have some recommendations that Director Epler may want to discuss, is, and we do believe we have the funding for this, is to have a enclosed facility where residents, and visitors could come and drop off their solid waste. Not going up to the transfer station. Transfer station, it'd be great if we could get people to go up there. It's just too far out of the way to be practical. But to have something closer to the core, we have a couple of options on where that location could be. One option would be in Plaza del Sol, that front property that we own, the front of Plaza del Sol, that is where the skateboard park was. If y'all know where that was, that would be a potential location that would be close to the core of town, somewhat visible. Actually, the lot in front of it would be more idea if we own that lot, but we don't, the resort does, and they use it for overflow when the black lots fill up, so I'm not sure, we'd have to negotiate with them some sort of land swap if we were trying to go there. So that's one option though, with the front part of Plaza del Sol. The other option would be, because the timing is a little less desirable, is when we build a new fire station, my recommendation to council is gonna be to tear down the old fire station. It's not in compliance with current building code. It has a lot of issues with it. I don't think it's gonna be worth reinvesting in to maintain that building. So my recommendation to council would be to tear that down. That would be a good location. It would have some challenges of people coming in, going east on Bill Burgess. We'd have to recreate turning lanes and so on. Because there are some medians there that may conflict with what we're trying to achieve. But it would be closer to the core area. The other option that we have that would be relatively close to the core option is this lot right next door, which previously was an open air transfer location for solid waste. That lot location, even with the trees and the different obstruction of view items that are there, the mounds and so on. And, you know, might be a great location for one. To me, the only negative about it is it's gonna take a little bit of education to get the people that are renting the condos to come and know where that is. It won't be as obvious as visually obvious, which is also an advantage. The fact that, you know, we don't want this. And if we did do a structure that was indoors, we would make it aesthetically pleasing exterior in the exterior. So we would try and, you know, we don't want just some big metal building that sticks out like a sore thumb. We would want to make it a building that was, you know, had some nice trim on it and good coloration of that building so that it would fit in better with the surroundings. So those are kind of the three options that we see where we could put such a facility. And I do think that that facility would be a very good investment for the community. And it would solve a lot of the trash that we now have blowing around in the community, some of that issue. And it could also become add to the efficiency of our solid waste department, because we could instill, instead of just having cans where we have to go pick them up, dump them into a truck, take the truck, put the truck, you know, dump out of the truck into a trailer and then haul the wagon mount. We could, you know, make it more efficient by just having it packed into a container that goes straight to wagon mount without being handled again. So this is something I just want to bring up. We've been talking about it. The management team's been talking about this now for about a month. And I just think it's progressed to the point that we need to kind of bring the council into a conversation and get feedback from the council on what your desires would be. Because the next step would be for us to hire an engineering firm to do some preliminary engineering on the construction of a facility like this, so we can get an idea of the exact cost instead of the rough estimates we have now.
Have either of y'all had an opportunity to see a facility that we'd like to mimic? In other words, are we? Kurt, I know that we talked to that one company that just put a few facilities in near Albuquerque.
Yeah, I just have not been able to make that trip, happen. I have, had photos sent to me of different scenarios, indoor and outdoor. That involve, compactors as opposed to dumpsters. Some of those photos were from Breckenridge, Colorado. You know, another resort town that has a centralized, large solid waste facility for drop off. And yeah, there's, according to those vendors, there's limitless options. The hope with the compactors is to be able to design a lower profile building. It doesn't require clearance for a truck to dump a dumpster in the back.
And all indoors, where
All
the trash
indoors.
is secured
Yes,
from the animals, the elements.
yes. And when the people are getting out of their car to drop their trash out, they're out of the elements as well.
And you still have the contractor, the dump out by the airport for contractor drop off, or this is gonna be?
Well, that's
the
right.
one- The transfer station, yeah.
Well,
Transfer station would remain operational as it is today for construction material slash. Large items. This would be for, this facility would be for, standard home use, household. Refuge.
well, I think there's also the element to it that maybe we have unwanted contractor drop off at the dumpsters sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it should be considered in design to make this, not impossible, but difficult to enter and exit with the trailer.
Yeah.
And to encourage those people to go to the solid waste transfer facility.
So I like the idea that the manager was talking about to eliminate as many steps as possible to build a facility with start to finish. And once you get the solid waste at that facility, it goes to Wagon Man. We don't go through.
Handle it several
Yeah.
times. If we currently do it every time, you have the opportunity to lose trash.
Right.
Well, let me just say, I would be totally opposed to putting that in Plaza del Sol. The Comprehensive Planning Committee has spent a lot of time discussing how Plaza del Sol could be developed into a really nice event center and having a
Yeah.
would just not work. And members of the largest tax are bringing us ideas on their thoughts on it. There's a lot of interest in this development of Plaza del Sol into an event center. And putting it down there just didn't work. If you're gonna do that.
But one thing I just want to say, I mean, I don't necessarily just agree with you, Councilman Humbert, but this would be an enclosed building. It would just be a building. It wouldn't be a dump location like we see today. It would be designed to contain trash. It would just be a big building that people would be pulling through. And Plaza del Sol, 17 acres of land, I believe, maybe 18. And it could be placed, like I said, in one place. It's not gonna prevent an event center. Where we have conversations, the new fire station we're working on is most likely going to end up in Plaza del Sol. So there's plenty of room to put those buildings and this building in Plaza del Sol, and I'm not recommending it. I just want you to know, I know that you're thinking it's trash, but this is gonna be a building where you're not gonna see the trash from the exterior.
I think it would probably be helpful to, I know Kurt's got a lot on his plate, but seeing some of the building, getting some pictures, some size, some scope would be helpful. I like the idea of it being where Fire Station 1 is, other than the fact that we're not gonna have a replacement for Fire Station 1.
Probably 2 years.
Right. So that, to me, that's the only downside of that plan is, I like that it's frontage over there, it's close to the condos. But if it's 2 years before we're ready to knock that building down and put something else there, that's a long time of continuing what's a fairly inefficient process. The only other comment I would make is, the dumpster situation with, and we've all seen it, people throwing remnants of a remodel into our dumpsters over here by the trash cans. That's a concern when we do, if we end up with a building designed to prevent those types of things, we're gonna have some percentage of that trash that finds an interesting home. I mean, we find it when we're out walking the dog and those types of things. One consideration, and I know it's cost, but right now you can't take a trailer load to the transfer station after 3:15. You know, if we're going to route all of that contractor traffic that way, do we need to extend those hours to allow for them to have more time to do that dropping at the right location?
One other concern that I have with an automated mechanical system is if there's failure.
Yeah.
And we have trash coming in and it can't be dealt with. You'd have to have some kind of contingency plan.
But we would, Mr. Mayor, what we're contemplated so far would have 4 of these units in it. The building would have 4 units. So it's true, anything mechanical is gonna have a point of failure. But the likelihood of all 4 being, failing simultaneously, I think is.
No, in speaking with one of the vendors, I brought that question up. And they said in his locations, cameras are the key. But also, the machines can be made to, give notification if they are broken down.
Backup generator, maybe.
Yeah.
Power.
Well, it'd be more of a notification. We won't call it SCADA, but it's the same principle.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Any other discussion on the solid waste drop off location? All right, then we'll move on to item F, discussion of the financial impact of a 12-hour holiday pay. So, Manager Weir.
So, Mr. Mayor, the council asked me to look into the financial impact of doing changing the current policy of only allowing staff to have 8 hours of holiday pay if they work on a holiday. So right now, the way they could work 10 or 12 or 24 hours on a holiday, they only get 8 hours of holiday pay. If they're scheduled, if their normal schedule, they work 4/10s, or if they work 48-hour shifts like the fire department does, if they only get 8 hours of holiday pay. So we talked about the potential of increasing that to 10 or to 12, or the other option is however many hours they work on that holiday, they would get that number of that amount of holiday pay. And the council kind of seemed like you were leaning towards 12 hours or how many hours they worked. And so, and asked me to do a financial analysis. I will tell you, unfortunately, that financial analysis, to get real numbers, I was gonna have to go to each person and count them manually, because we don't systematically track. We track holiday hours that they get paid for, but we don't correspondingly track how many hours are worked on a holiday. So I looked at it like this. I would say that only about a quarter of our staff are working on a holiday, and that's probably a high estimate. But right now, we pay out $123,000 a year in holiday pay. That's everybody that gets holiday pay, $123,000 at the 8-hour rate. So to me, that
Half that.
a
Well,
quarter of it.
a quarter.
Yeah, so my estimate is And the difference between working 12 hours and working more is really. The only departments that are gonna be heavily affected by that are gonna be really the fire department, but to some degree, the police, and some degree. The streets department, if we have a weather situation, and some degree, the water department, if we have a pipe break on a holiday. And so my estimate is that the cost is gonna be near the same. And the cost of either one of those is gonna be approximately 25% of $120,000. Which in my estimate, if what the council is looking to do is to reward our employees. For working on holidays and showing our appreciation. I think the $30,000 in cost is well worth it.
Is there a determination on what's gonna be easier to implement, a 12-hour cap or hours worked, hours paid?
Well, that's,
I mean,
I'm sorry.
from the technical perspective, in your accounting software, because I agree, I think we were kind of leaning towards. If you work an hour, you ought to be paid an hour. If you work 13 hours, you ought to be paid 13 hours, but, so do we want to tailor this towards the 12 or towards the hours worked, hours paid?
so it doesn't matter, it's gonna have to be manually entered like it
Either way.
is today, either way.
So, I think the employees need to be paid for hours worked. And I know water and sewer, for example, sometimes those people are out there forever, so.
So this will be an ordinance change because it's in ordinance that we would have to go in and take the 8-hour cap and have it read hours worked, hours paid.
Yeah, we just have to change the language in that, and by the way, I was talking with Steve Ross just this morning, and he's the legal counsel that the municipal league hired. To rewrite our personnel ordinance, and it's about 90% done. I'm asked him to push to try and get it done so I can have it on the agenda on the 13th.
And I'll just say that, of course, I wanna always show our appreciation, especially to the people that work, the holidays, number one, and especially if they're working over an 8-hour shift. I will say, I just wanna make sure that we're not setting up a future burden for the village financially. I mean, because we're going from 128,000, we're looking at a 12-hour, we're already adding 30,000. The one that's gonna definitely impact the most would be fire, so you're automatically taking them to 24. Because they work a 24 or 48-hour shift. So right there, we could be taking it. Police is gonna be in some instances, streets in some instances. So that's why I'm in support of the 12-hour, is I think we can calculate that number. And I think the fire department, I hope it would sense our appreciation. Since that's the structure that they work at currently and are only getting paid for 8. But I'd like to see what this ultimately does to the budget. And maybe revisit it in a year. But I would like to show some kind of appreciation. That's what I would have to add.
Again, Mr. Mayor, I just think the difference between 12-hour and whatever you worked is mainly gonna be seen in the fire department.
Right.
And I mean, you'll see it to some extent in police, but again, it's because something happened, you know.
Which we're
And the
busy
water
on.
in the streets, it's because either we have a weather condition for streets or they have a water main break or something of that nature. For the water department, the majority of the impact going in the difference between 12 and how many hours you worked is gonna be for the fire department. I will also tell you, I don't know if I should say this out loud, but the hourly rate for the fire department, because of the type of schedules they work, the fact that they work 48s and 72s. Comparatively, their hourly rates are lower, but it's because the market allows that because they get to sleep during a big chunk of or they have the possibility of sleeping during a big chunk of their work day. You know, because they're on call, they're in the office, they are working, but they're also, it's not like manning the.
May I add to that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. The only other reason behind that is, we're FLSA exempt and we're not able to pay into social security, so we won't have the social security benefit, full social security benefit as a normal citizen would or non-FLSA
So,
exempt.
Chief, that's in this village, we do social security for all of our employees.
If I'm not mistaken, I think, through the Social Security Administration, you have to pay into quarters and so forth, but because we were FLSA exempt for duration of our career, if we do stay 20 years and retire or whatever, it puts us in a different classification for Social Security Administration. So we're not able to draw the
What
full
we
Social
withhold
Security benefit.
currently is. So
just wanted to add some
the
context.
problem, the issue with that is, it's really bigger than just the fire department. I mean, first, you are FLSA exempt, except for the chief. But the issue is that because we have a state retirement plan, even all of us, if we exceed whatever the then rate is, this year is $44,000. If we receive in excess of $44,000 in some other source, para would be the source. Your social security is taxed at a rate up to 85%, depending upon what your other deductions are. And so therefore, people, it is federally legal for people that have state-sponsored retirement funds to opt out of social security. We've never done that here. There are other communities like Taos that do that. And so, and there's a lot of them that do it. I'm just using Taos as an example. So that's something that I'm working on, actually, working on with Chief Hogriff to get us in a position where we can allow our staff to opt out of social security. Because quite frankly, if you're gonna retire on para, you're not gonna get much out of social security. And it's costing the employee a lot of money, and it's costing the village a lot of money. So that is something we've been working to try and put in place here. Hopefully we'll be able to wrap that up and present something to y'all soon, but it's something we're gonna have to have our new legal counsel address for us as soon as we appoint the new legal counsel. So I hope to have something that soon. And so, I mean, there's a lot of issues around social security. But you know, for this, I'm not saying the fire department doesn't deserve the full pay or anything. I'm just saying it's a consideration. I did the interim chief, I did ask him about it. And his comment to me would that the expectations of the fire department is not to get more than what they had, and they'd be extremely appreciative of anything the council would do to try and make their paychecks that they take home bigger.
So
Now, I
they're
haven't had this
I echo that.
conversation.
I echo that.
And they aren't, just to clarify, they are getting their regular rate on the holiday. And then this is an additional pay
That's correct.
on top of the regular rate.
That's correct.
So they were.
And this pay has nothing to do with overtime. It doesn't affect overtime in any way. It's just an additional holiday pay that we pay them for a holiday. People that don't work would get the 8 hours. This is for the people that do work on a holiday.
They get their time paid plus up to 12 in this version.
Up to 12 or, yeah, whatever you decide. Currently, it's up to 8, or it is 8.
It is a,
It's not up to 8, it's 8. Unless you're part-time, then you only get 4.
Okay.
So again, y'all just asked me to report back. It's gonna be part of the ordinance update that I hope to have to y'all on the 13th. But I want y'all thinking about it, so we'll present the ordinance update. Keep in mind that if you don't like pieces of the ordinance, you can make a motion to amend the ordinance. So if there's, you know, I'm looking for direction on what you want me to put in there, but when it comes voting time, if you change your mind, you're not stuck with it. Once you vote on it, you're stuck with it until you vote again, and there's a process for that that takes about a month because it's an ordinance, but I just want to make sure y'all are thinking about this, talking to constituents, talking to the management team to try and get feedback. So that ultimately, when this comes to the council for a decision, that y'all are knowledgeable and make a decision you feel is best for the village.
Good. All right, we'll move on to item G, discussion on South Angel Fire Road improvement. Dr. Epler.
Yeah, I asked this item to be added for discussion because it is fully our intention to resurface South Angel Fire Road from the intersection of 434 to the intersection of Bill Burgess Boulevard, so all the way through to the library. Also, in addition to that, the section of Aspen Street that goes from South Angel Fire Road to Vale Avenue, I've included that in this project as well. We had thought this would be a good project for the LiftTech product that has been being presented to Angel Fire the last few years. Initial estimates that we received from them were significantly higher than paving. I did the latest estimate that I just received literally 30 minutes before this meeting started. For those two sections of road was $990,000. The estimate for a straight mill and fill, milling the existing material and then topping with 4 inches of pavement with consideration to existing utilities, manhole covers, valve cans, so forth and so on is $970,000. The estimate for $990,000 was submitted sight unseen. The contractors have never seen the site. They will be here on Friday. I'll be picking them up at the airport at 9 o'clock to go show them. So I foresee that number potentially going up some once they see that, you know, it could at minimum put it at $1 million. The initial estimate that we received from the same contractor that presented numbers for the LiftTech product last year with the intentions of starting in the fall, but it didn't happen. His initial bid came in at 1.25 million. I'm bringing these numbers forward because I know that the LiftTech product has been conveyed as a much cheaper alternative. To the point where I've heard people say that it's half the cost of paving. It's not. It's actually slightly more expensive.
Well, and the caveat is, where they claim to save the money is in the asphalt. So in the LiftTech, you're doing the LiftTech treatment to the subbase. I mean, I think you're all very familiar at this point with their process. They treat the surface below, and then 2 inches of asphalt is supposed to suffice instead of 4. But as Director Epler, as we've looked at this, 4 inches of asphalt is actually less expensive than the initial bids for 2 inches of LiftTech, 2 inches of asphalt over LiftTech.
So the finished surface is still asphalt.
Yes.
In
Now,
either way,
to be fair, another thing to consider is you have 8 inches of LiftTech treated subgrade and then 2 inches of asphalt on top. The LiftTech product, yeah, they claim is more durable and harder than asphalt. So, you know, simply you could equate it to 10 inches of asphalt. Okay.
And that is how they promote it.
Yes, absolutely.
so you'd be expected to have less potholes, less, and less maintenance, like, would it last 5 years longer if you did the lift
Well, they
than
don't
the
give any
asphalt?
additional, they don't give any additional warranty, is the rub I have. But they do claim it will, and because their whole sales pitch is the roads fail from below the surface. And I think there's some truth to that. And so if you properly treat that base, you can get 2 inches of asphalt and you'll have a road that'll last substantially longer than one conventionally built with 4 inches of asphalt.
Well, is there some mobilization hitting us here? Because as I recall, the List Tech was gonna be South Angel Fire and Lakeview Boulevard. In other words, has their price necessarily gone up because they're doing less miles? So per
We've
mile.
actually added more.
We added more, okay.
Well, it was originally only part of, South Angel Fire from 434 up to, Wheeler Peak Lodge. Basically, and then, of course, from 434 to, I think, to the intersections of Lakeview Terrace and Lakeview Drive, or whatever those two roads are. And all we did was we said it, you know, or as a pilot, we thought it'd make sense to do the whole road on South Angel Fire Boulevard.
One, just feel like the library, that bridge area, all that area. Gets quite a bit of traffic and is in steady disrepair, yeah.
Well, I think if we had a viable alternative to the approach to, say, the blue parking lot, for instance, the one below Vale Avenue, as opposed to everybody turning there by Mountain Spirits, having another opportunity by the library to approach or exit. I mean, that's just one element of it, but it ties in the core of our village real well. One thing I do want to add in reviewing the estimate for the projects that were going to be done last fall, there were errors in calculations. Both projects, the one by Monteverde Lake and the section of South Angel Fire Road, had the same footage amounts. But yet, when they pointed out the beginning and ending point on South Angel Fire Road, both projects were listed as 2,300 feet. The South Angel Fire portion of it was actually 1,700 feet when measured out. The other thing, one of the other things that I noticed is it was just 24-foot wide of treatment, so they were essentially just treating the lanes. There was no treatment of shoulder, forest slope, the rest of the road structure. So essentially 24-foot wide, very hard strip down the middle. You know, there's gonna be variances on the sides eventually. The other thing that I found is, cause it was priced with either CES or statewide price agreement. When they calculated the asphalt for the projects that they were going to do in the fall, they stated that it would be topped with 2 inches of asphalt. But the unit price that they had per square yard was for 1 inch. The rate of $15 an inch per square yard. So there were a few mistakes there that I think had it been cleaned up, that number would have gone up some. I think there's potential in the product, you know. I should add that I have not been able to research or confirm with anybody from the Pagosa area, but I have heard that the project there has had some significant failures. I think it may have to do with the fact that as opposed to the capping with 2 inches of asphalt, they chip sealed it. Which is one of the options for this project. I advise Mr. Sherman not to say the words chip seal and Angel Fire. But there have been some issues, but what it has brought light to light for me is, and I've asked Mr. Sherman to elaborate on this. I need to know who's going to warranty the product. The Lith Tech or the contractor that's doing the processing. And ultimately, the contractor is the primary for the job. And the Lith Tech product is a sub.
And both of these, am I correct, are offering a 1 year
Yes,
warranty?
yes.
I'll do that.
Now, will this still be something that would be done this summer and fall?
I would like to get a decision on this because what we have, if it ends up, we just go with paving.
we're gonna be starting, as soon as asphalt becomes available, we'll be paving CS Ranch Road and Valley Road project. The driveway to the community center, the upper parking level of the community center. Five Springs Road from the transverse drop inlet to Jackson Hole. And from Mammoth Mountain Road where the new pavement ends down Arapahoe. The hope is that, well, what I wanted to do is as GM Emulsions came in for the small project at the community center, we could tie in other projects and negotiate on mobilization fees, which they're very willing to do. I have an estimate to do a milling and repaving of Country Club Drive as well. It is something that it's gonna be difficult it has proven to be difficult to get grant money for. But it definitely needs to be addressed. It does appear from the estimate that I've received for Country Club Drive that we can do it from Go Bond funds. And the hope would be that if we get the decision on South Angel Fire Road, if it ends up being paving, we would be looking at mid-September when GM Emulsions would be able to come back and do those two projects.
And that would be pushing our season.
Yes,
I really don't wanna see this lapse again. But I was excited to hear last year when it was announced that South Angel Fire was gonna be done. But I'd hate to put it off another year.
It's bad right now.
And so, Mr. Mayor, the ask here is, just a sense of direction on how the council would like to proceed. This in itself isn't gonna come to a vote to the council. I mean, it could if you want it, but that wasn't the intent. The intent is to understand a direction from the council. And then we would, whichever way we went, we would bring a contract to you to perform the work for approval. So instead of bringing you two contracts and saying, which one do you want? We could do that too. We were hoped just for efficiency's sake to get a feel from the council. I mean, we can't make any decisions in a work session,
right.
but to understand the direction, you know, is it Lift Tech or no Lift Tech? And then as soon as whichever the opinion or feel is, then we would bring that agreement to the council to try and execute this as soon as possible.
So it sounds like the 970,000, that's a good number. The contractors visually seeing the job, like you said, it accounts for utilities manholes. You'll know more on the Lift Tech next week,
They're coming in Friday.
so give them a little bit of time to.
Yeah. Because it feels like there was obviously a lot of effort put in on this whole Lift Tech discussion before, and I think we were hoping to have a test case to see if it will live up to the hype, but to your point and the numbers and going through and appreciate all the work there, there is not a savings to be had, at least that we can see on the front end.
Unless it does indeed hold up 2 times longer than
Right.
the conventional asphalt road.
And then, in my opinion, the subgrade could, but the 2 inches of asphalt on the top is
Right.
still gonna have an H to it.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about two such vastly different materials, how they're going to bond, what kind of seams they have, how they move. You know, as things heat up or get cold, they expand and contract at different rates and how it's gonna stick together. I don't know, it may be wonderful, but I would like to really get this rolling. I've had the estimate for basic paving for quite some time. But I really wanted to give Lift Tech as much opportunity as we could to come in and make this competitive. Cause it will have to add after the first bid came in at 1.25, the next one came in at 1.7.
I would ask then, I think, my ask would be one, that obviously we get a good number, a firm number from Lift Tech. I think it should go to the streets committee right away. And I'd like to get a recommendation from the streets committee and staff as how they feel like we should proceed.
Mr. Mayor, the other concern that I have with Lift Tech is in the bid, I don't think it's apples to apples because of the condition of the shoulders. The treatment or lack of treatment on the Lift Tech shoulders versus the GM emulsion bid did include treatment on the shoulders.
I think all that should be presented to the street committee. As
That
well,
could be a significant expense.
and like to get it in a staff report and committee report. As soon as the next, maybe not the next regular council meeting, there's August 13th.
I'd like to get it on the August 13th, the contract on the August
I
13th.
agree, if we're gonna move in September.
Gotta go. Well, I had mentioned it was mid to late September for them to come back and pave. It could be sooner than that. They basically, after doing this project, they're in line to hopefully finish be at a point where they can do the paving in Eagle Nest. And then after that, be available to here. And again, hoping to tie projects together, they will negotiate with us on mobilization, because each individual bid has its own specified mobilization rate. Is there another project somewhere that wouldn't have the same shoulder concern, maybe somewhere that's curbed and gutted or something where we could have the Lift Tech trial if
Country Club Drive perhaps.
Well, the curb and gutter traps the asphalt already. So to me, the curb and gutter already solves the problem that Lift Tech may solve otherwise in an area that didn't have curb and gutter.
They don't have curb and gutter on South Angel Fire.
Oh, I know, but we're talking.
is there another?
I'm sorry.
I'd like to see it where there was a curb and gutter to really test it out. I mean, that's just my opinion there.
And I know the previous administration did multiple field trips to look at projects, and from what I understand, and again, I don't wanna take the Pagosa. I'd rather know for sure what's
That's where I'm at.
transpired there, and what those factors are. Might be a good question for the Lift Tech people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the numbers, a firm number will help a lot. But again, I'd like to get the committee and the staff to give the council a report of the 13th, or the next regular council meeting, is it the 13th?
13th, yes, sir. And so, Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to request that you try and pull together a streets committee meeting in first part of next week to evaluate this. Since you're the liaison for the streets committee.
And at the same time, let Lift Tech know that that's gonna be happening, and we need those revised numbers.
Okay,
Okay, I do want to, I guess on to that point, as Manager Weir says, maybe this isn't best to be said out loud. I was, my prior employment involved in the first meeting that Lift Tech presented here to the Village of Angel Fire. And it was first conveyed that they had a product that could just be sprayed on the base course and it'd be better than pavement. That turned into, well, it's even better if you put chip seal on it. Then it's even better than if you put asphalt on it. Pretty much through the whole process the message was being conveyed that it was half the cost of pavement.
I'd love to see if they could do a product that didn't involve asphalt and chip seal. Is it possible or is it not?
They're hard to guarantee it, it's not covered, it's designed to be covered,
Oh,
because I felt the same way, it'd be ideal for our base course roads.
right.
And maybe part of it is I'm old school, but when I hear the same story told in a different way over a course of time, it just throws up some red flags for me.
But on the price, you're right, they have touted half the price of asphalt, so,
Any further questions? No,
now let's I think we should adjourn this meeting.
Yep.